Hello everyone, my name is Darth Flaw and I'm from the YugiCast, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit differently. We're going to do something actually a bit akin to what I used to do on YouTube. Before I started working with the guys and gals at the YugiCast, I have my own YouTube channel where I talked over just gameplay of different video games. That's just what I'm going to do today. I wanted to have kind of an open discussion, talk about a few things, especially related to the upcoming ban list, because it is ban list season. I'm using air quotes as I say that, even though you can't see it. Um, just because the format's winding down, it's pretty much over. We've got worlds, there's a few regionals coming up, but for the most part the format's over and everyone's looking forward to September. Fire Fists are getting new support, Fire Kings are getting new support, there's new archetypes coming out, all sorts of really cool stuff to look forward to. But the first thing that we have to do is get through this format. We have to look forward to what's going to happen on the ban list, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Before I start talking about that, I want to talk a little bit about the gameplay that you're going to be seeing. um, I needed something easy, quote unquote easy, to get and to talk over, just so I wasn't like just stuff that was easy to watch. You could kind of ignore it if you wanted to. So I played Empty Jar and I played Chain Burn and I played Fire Fist and stuff like that. I think that's all that's on this video. I just needed a nice long block of video to talk over. And an old thing that people do when they need to do a commentary like this is they just get easy gameplay. For me back in the day, it was 2v2 Halos, Halo Reach with my friend Billy, or any Black Ops Free for All. I was a monster in both of those, so anytime I wanted an easy gameplay, that's what I did. When you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh, if you want an easy gameplay, you just go on DevPro and play Chain Burn and deal with the fact that people are going to call you all kinds of really mean names. So that's just a little bit about the gameplay, or the games that you're going to see. You're welcome to ignore them if you like. But what I want to talk about now is I'm just going to go ahead and jump into it. Gonna talk about the ban list. I'm gonna do kind of an all-encompassing thing here. I want to take several factors into account. And the first thing that I want to take into account is the current metagame. What is the current metagame of Yu-Gi-Oh? We recently underwent a huge format shift with the release of Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy. There's going to be another one coming up with the Judgment of the Light. You'll see a slight shift in the format. Excuse me, not much of one, but there will be a few noticeable changes. And then, of course, the big changes will come in September. But what I want to do is look at the format pre and post Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy. Since we're already in post Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy, I'm just going to go ahead and look at that right now. It's the easiest thing to address. And currently the format post Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy is nothing but Elemental Dragons and Spellbooks. Now these are easily the two biggest decks. Evil Swarmer in there somewhere. I'm going to talk a little bit about Evil Swarmer and what I think the future of decks like Evil Swarmer is going to be as I go along. But Evil Swarmer have kind of been a non-factor this format simply because Prophecy dropped Priestess for the most part. Elemental Dragons can play around him very easily thanks to cards like Tsukiyomi, Psyblocker, Effect Veiler, Blaster. The list just kind of keeps going and going and going, you know? Just lots of ways around that card. So they've been kind of a non-factor. The two biggest decks have been Dragons and Prophecy. I'll talk a little bit about what makes each deck powerful. Now, the biggest things that make... We're going to start with Dragons because I think that's easily the biggest deck right now, the most powerful deck right now. Dragons, the thing that makes that deck the most powerful, there's two key factors to it. First is Super Rejuvenation. Second are the miniature dragons, the tiny dragons, the baby dragons, as a lot of people call them. The big dragons by themselves are not inherently flawed. They're not unbalanced. They're not broken. They're great archetypal support, or attributable support rather. They're pretty balanced cards. They have multiple effects, but you only get one effect a turn. They all do great things for what they do. Tidal makes Mermails just unbelievably good, as if they weren't already. Fire Fist, Lavals, any deck based off fire attributes, they get a huge boost from Blaster. Tempest. Tempest made decks like Dragoonides and Gustos. It gave them a nice boost. Those decks still aren't going to do anything very relevant, but it gave them a nice boost. It makes them faster, it makes them more competitive, and it gives them a bit of consistency that they lacked before. Redox is great, and well, we've already seen Redox gadgets. With the new plant support coming out, I think Redox is great in there. You can do some cool stuff with that, like pitch Redox plus Dandy to reborn a Spore, and then you have Spore plus Dandy tokens, so you can sync for formula, and you can banish Dandy to get back Spore to make your level 5 synchro. Like, there's lots of really cool tricks that you can do in there that I think a lot of people aren't taking into account. They're amazing. Also, Redox is really good in Psychics, which is a deck I think the community is determined to make relevant, even though I don't think it's going to work. So the big dragons by themselves are not inherently flawed. They're actually great cards. They do a lot of cool stuff. I really, really like the big dragons. The miniature dragons, however, they're what allowed the deck to become a deck. basically. It makes them into a rank 7 toolbox because when you have when you have a hand of miniature dragons and big dragons, you can basically start getting free dragons, make your Draco stack, and then suddenly you have live dragons in your grave, or live targets in your grave to banish for the big dragons effects. So you go from, okay, he's got a couple of big dragons, your opponent has a couple of big dragons who cannot attack, to they have an indestructible 2600 beater that can pop cards, plus big dragons that now can attack because they were summoned through their own effects. And it's just one of those things that I feel like the miniature dragons just open up too many options for them. However, the miniature dragons are not the only problem. As a matter of fact, I feel like they're the smaller of the two big problems that that deck has. The other one being Super Rejuvenation. Super Rejuvenation is a card that, again, in a vacuum by itself, is not a terribly dangerous card. It's not a terribly broken card. However, its interactions with elemental dragons is borderline degenerate. It You can literally rejuve for upwards of 8. I have literally done it on Death Pro and on DN, solitary hands in real life. You can take a hand of five dragons and a super rejuvenation and hit rejuvenation for 8 cards, very very easily. And the fact that those 8 cards are going to net you another rejuvenation that you can activate in the end phase, which is going to get you another, like the fact that you can power through 3/4 of your deck before your opponent even gets a turn is just a little absurd. I feel like that's the biggest problem with the deck, because it basically makes their game 2 and 3 so much easier than it needs to be, because Rejuvenation just says, here, go ahead and draw your side cards as soon as you want them, basically on demand. And that, I think, is kind of the big problem. It also lets people draw into their text and stuff like that. It helps fuel the grave for all their big dragons effects while keeping mini dragons live in hand. Just all kinds of problems with that card. I feel like if you're going to touch dragons, that's the best card to touch, but we'll get into that later. The other big deck of the format is Spellbooks, and the thing that makes this deck unreal is hands down, bar none, Spellbook of Judgment. This deck was kind of floating under the radar. It was in the tier 1.5 to 2 category for a very long time, since releasing in Return of the Duelist. It's a very good deck. It's a very consistent deck. It's even before Judgment, it was a very consistent deck. The thing that Judgment allows the deck to do is basically play a turn or two ahead of itself. Depending on your hand, you can literally play 2 turns ahead of yourself with Spellbooks. You're basically always resolving judgments to sculpt your hand for next turn, and progressing your game state that way. A lot of people don't like Spellbook of Fate. They feel like that card's a problem card. That card's been out since Return of the Duelist, and it's never been a problem. The fact that it doesn't target is a little unfair, but I feel like it's just one of those cards that's Yu-Gi-Oh! That's just something you have to deal with. Spellbook of Fate is the problem, Judgment is, and I feel like putting that card to 1 actually is all you need to do to the deck. It's still not. It's very, especially now, it's very susceptible to a lot of stuff. Konami are introducing a lot of ways to sideboard against this deck. Crazy Box gives anything that can make rank 4s EEV targets. Mistake just shuts the deck down. Thunder King does still hurt the deck quite a bit. It's a very easy deck to side against, basically, is what I'm getting at. It's knowing when and how to play against them. A lot of people like to rely on less conventional cards like Joel and Lockbird, which are not very good against the deck. And the fact that it can generate so much advantage while depleting your resources, it just creates some problems. But I really feel like all that is just because Judgment is a card. But yeah, that's the current meta. However, and that's what a lot of people look at when they look at, oh, well, this is what they need to do on the ban list. However, you have to realize something. The March 2013 format has essentially been 2 formats. Basically, like I said, we've had 2 formats. We had the pre-Lord of the Attacking Galaxy and the post-Lord of the Attacking Galaxy. So we've talked about post. Let's look at the pre-Lord of the Attacking Galaxy format. We had Fire Fists, Water, and Dino Rabbit. Those were the top 3 decks. Dino Rabbit was a deck because it can mainboard Macrocosmos and do it very effectively, Logi and Dolka notwithstanding. Fire Fists were an incredibly consistent deck. It's a deck that it's a very slow rolling deck, but once it goes, it's a deck that snowballs on you. It just generates so much advantage so quickly that it can be very hard to stop. And then Water is just water. It has so many ways to OTK you. The fact that its costs generate advantage is kind of a problem. But that's kind of where that deck stood. That's just what it did. It was very easy to counter with cards like Soul Drain and Dimensional Fissure and Macrocosmos and things like that. It was a very powerful deck, but it wasn't necessarily an unbeatable deck. As a matter of fact, I think a lot of players would agree all of last format and then up to up to Lord of the Attacking Galaxy, we actually had a very enjoyable portion of Yu-Gi-Oh going on there, despite the dominance of water. But anyway, that's the pre-LTGY format. That's something that you have to address, something you have to consider when you're doing something like this. So, let's talk a little bit now about what a lot of people are expecting the ban list to do, and why I don't think that it's necessarily all that's going to happen. Now, a lot of people simply want Dragons and Prophecy nerfed. They want the minis gone, Rejuve gone, Judgment gone. Some people want Fate gone for whatever reason. All kinds of stuff like this. But here's the problem with that mindset. Konami have new archetypes and a new wave of product pushing out that they want players to pick up on. Which of course is very difficult to do when you have. It's difficult to encourage players to play things with decks like Dragons and Prophecy floating around. However, just touching Dragons and Prophecy are just going to revert us back to the pre-Attacking Galaxy format. Fire Fists, especially with the new support, Water, and Dino Rabbit would again become the top decks. And yes, I did say Dino Rabbit. Dino Rabbit actually has a very, very favorable matchup against a lot of decks that are getting ready to come out. Things are getting more graveyard oriented. Dino Rabbit can mainboard Macrocosmos with no problem, like no way of hurting itself whatsoever. It stands, depending on what the ban list does, that could become another contender for a top deck, at least for the first part of the September 2013 format. So that's just kind of why I think simply hitting the top 2 decks is not what people are going to see. You're going to see hits come to those decks, but you're also going to see some other hits that I think a lot of people are going to disagree with. Stuff like Tanky to 1 or 2, which honestly I think it needs to go to 2. Stuff like Dragoons could probably go to 1. I feel like that's the best way to handle Mermails. I feel like if you put Dragoons to 1, you basically fix all the problems that deck has. There's no reason for them to have a Stratos that searches literally all of their boss monsters. That's just a little silly to me. And Tidal more than makes up for the loss of Dragoons, in my opinion. So you'll see things like that. You may see some other weird hits. You may see things like Jowgen and Kaiku get touched just because of their interactions in Prophecy. But yeah, this is kind of like I said, this is the weird point that Konami have put themselves in. They have to fix so many things at once. They're essentially going to have to fix 2 formats in order to make the next format more enjoyable for the players. Otherwise, you're literally just going to see the back half of last format again, minus the presence of windups, due to the outrageous hits that deck took. I still stand by that. Zenmaity should not have been the first XYZ hit. I feel like Magician should have gone to 1, and that would have fixed all the problems that people had with windups. I feel like still the first XYZ monster that should have been banned, and what I still feel should be banned on the upcoming ban list is Leviair the Sea Dragon. I don't like that. Well, I love the card itself. It's a very powerful card. I feel like a lot of people underestimate that card for what it can do. It's just a little bit too powerful in my opinion. I feel like it needs to go away at some point. When things are removed from the game, they're supposed to be removed from the game. That's the way I feel about that. But yeah, that's just kind of what I want to talk about with the ban list, what's coming up, what you guys can probably expect to see, why you shouldn't be surprised by any weird hits that come out. I'm overall looking forward to the next format. I didn't want to speculate too much on what I think is going to happen. One thing I would like to say before I cut off this video, however, leave you guys with the last minute and a half or so of gameplay. What I want to come back off of the list, I would like to see Book of Moon go to 2. I was talking to my friend Valfar the other day. It's very possible that we could see Compulsory Evacuation Device get a hit, because it's kind of like the Book of Moon of the XYZ era. It's a 1 card out to all those kinds of things. I feel like Book of Moon can come back to 2, and if they want to touch Compulse, something like that. Just something to give us another good stun card. I think 2 is the perfect number for Book. But yeah, that's what I have. Please let me know what you guys think of these discussions. If you like them, I can do more. And let me know what you guys think, what you guys expect to see on the ban list, and all that good stuff. Please be sure, like always, to like, comment, subscribe. Check out the live stream every week. We're slowly getting back into the groove. We've had a few people on vacation. My current living situation over the summer has made it so that I can't help stream or anything like that. We're slowly getting back to it. Let us know what you guys think, and we will see you guys next time. I'm out. Peace.